adventurers and photographers, my name is Alexandra and I run the Bucket List Mermaid, which is basically a resource for you to check off all of your adventure bucket list and take some pretty cool photos while doing it. Now today we are going to be talking about photography. Now specifically, phone photography. We're not talking those big expensive clunky DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. This is just your phone. More specifically, how to use your phone in one of the most iconic slot canyons in the entire world, and that is Antelope Canyon. Now, Antelope Canyon is tricky, and that is because there's so much contrasting lighting. Seriously, as a photographer, I wake up in night sweats, and I'm like, Antelope Canyon, oh no. No, I'm totally kidding. It is beautiful. It is seriously jaw-dropping. You will not regret going. It is one of the coolest slot canyons I have ever seen, ever in my entire life. However, taking pictures of it is a completely different story, so let's talk about how to get those bad photos with your phone in Antelope Canyon. Before we get started, if you are looking for a Antelope Canyon guided tour, which you do need because it is on Navajo land and it is strictly regulated, you do need a tour. I repeat, you do need a tour. Don't just show up. You do need a tour. I wrote an entire guide on phone photography for Antelope Canyon, and I have a link to the tours on there if you are ready to book. Now, here's why you need this guide. As I said, I'm gonna hold your hand when I say this. This is tricky. And it's kind of easy to get like good photos, like you can't just point and shoot, but if you want great photos that you like show your friends or you frame in your dining room, this guide is going to be for you. To prove my point, I am going to show you a picture of one photo that my mother got of Antelope Canyon, and then the other photo that I got with the same exact phone. So if you want the picture to the right, stay tuned. Now, why is Antelope Canyon so hard to photograph? As I said, it's because it's a slot canyon. So there's going to be very dark and harsh shadows at the bottom, and then a lot of light coming through the top. This means your camera doesn't know what to expose for. I understand, it's confused. It's like, do I overexpose the bottom or the top? And it just is like, I'm not sure what to do here. Now, good news, I have noticed that most of these newer phones coming out do have a really good HDR mode, which is high dynamic range mode, and this does make it a little easier for you. However, it just gets a little tricky with all of this contrasting light. And the other question, what is better, a camera or a phone? Now, you can do it with a phone. Obviously, not a lot of people have like these big expensive DSLRs. So it can be done with a phone. And as I said, these newer phones have really good HDR. So you might be able to get some really good photos where the bottom of the canyon is illuminated nicely and the top of the canyon isn't completely blown out by the sun. However, I did take both. I did take my phone and my camera in both lower and upper Antelope Canyon. And I would be like, oh, my phone photos are super cool. And then I'd look at my camera ones and my jaw would just drop. So although it is possible, I would recommend bringing a camera if you have one. However, if you don't have a camera, don't panic. Let's talk about how you can get the best photos possible. And even if you do have a phone, it's portable, it's convenient, it's easy, it's accessible. You can share it directly from your phone, and it has pano mode, super easy, which we'll talk about it because you're gonna want to use it. The only thing is it might have some limited capabilities for light compared to other more high-end cameras. It does have some zoom limitations depending on which phone you're using, and it's obviously going to be less quality than a camera. Overall, I thought that the HDR was easier to use on the phone. I also liked the zoom and the 0.5 capabilities, and it was just easy, quick, and portable, and you can get a wide variety of shots with very little effort. So let's talk about the phone settings that you use in Antelope Canyon. Now, an important point, I would make sure that you know how to use your phone, you have it set to the correct settings before you go on your tour. These tours are hectic, they're chaotic, there's a lot of people in there, and you are not going to have time to be fumbling around with your phone. Yeah, you need to be as prepared as possible, point and shoot, and go. Now, I would recommend doing the exposure manually instead of just pointing and shooting. Now, on most phones, you can just tap, and then you can tap, hold down, and then use your finger to slide the exposure. I would also recommend locking the exposure for consistent results. Basically, just hold it down until you see like the AF lock or AE. This just ensures that your settings don't change in between shots. But if you're taking dynamic shots, maybe you don't want to do this, so it's kind of up to you. There's also some third-party apps that you can download, and this will manually allow you to control the ISO, the aperture, the shutter speed, just like you would a DSLR camera. Now let's talk about HDR mode, which is high dynamic range, and how to use it effectively. This is going to be your best friend in slot canyons, and you cannot skip this step. Basically, this just puts multiple exposures into one image, so it'll basically expose expose for the sky, it'll expose for the ground, and then it'll stitch it together, all without you having to do a thing. I did actually do this manually on my camera, and I got some pretty good shots, but woo, it was not user-friendly at all. So for the iPhone, you're gonna go to Settings, Camera, and then turn on Smart HDR mode. Or you can enable HDR manually in the camera app. Now I'm sorry, I do not use Android, I use iPhone, but theoretically you would open that camera app and then look for an HDR setting. Sometimes it's called Rich Tone or Auto HDR. Maybe someone with an Android can comment, because I have no clue, I've never used Android. Once enabled, you are just going to compose your shot as usual, and the camera magic will do the rest. Now, another tip that I actually got from my guide is turn on vivid warm mode. It's like normally like a filter. Now I know what you're saying, you're like, I want it to be natural, but trust me, it's really gonna bring out the orange and the yellow tones in that rock, and it's going to make it a lot easier to edit later or not do editing at all. Now next, tap to focus and focus. This canyon demands attention, and you need to make sure that what you want in focus is actually in focus. So on my iPhone, I would take what I wanted in focus, I would simply tap on it, and then the phone would do the rest. Now another thing that helped me a lot was turning on grid lines. This is really good for composition, especially with the rule of thirds. Now you can break the rule of thirds. I'm all about breaking rules over here in photography. However, it can help, especially if you're new to photography and composition, and it can just create a more pleasing to the eye photo. Now to turn it on, you go to Settings, Camera, Grid. Now with that being said, let's talk about some compositional tricks for photographing Antelope Canyon with your phone. Now let's talk about my favorite one, which is pano mode. Now I know you've probably seen pano mode before, going from the left to the right with that little arrow, but I'm gonna challenge you to use it in a different way here. Turn your phone the other way, start at the bottom and go to the top. This way you get the entire canyon and you get some epic photos by using this technique. Now next, leading lines. Antelope Canyon is very graceful and it offers literally a plethora, just so many leading lines and opportunities for leading lines, but just make sure that your photo leads somewhere. It guides the eye. It uses those beautiful textures and those curves in order to create an amazing photo that guides your eye. Now another one that I like is a frame within a frame. So like using the rocks to frame something else. Maybe like putting the rock in front of you and then focusing on something in the background. That's an idea. Again, just guiding the eye to create aesthetically pleasing images. Now another one that's going to be great for Antelope Canyon is symmetry and patterns. Again, it has those really graceful lines everywhere, and you can really zoom in on some of those textures and those patterns to create some very, very cool images that literally look like they came out of a Nat Geo magazine. So those are the main ones, but let's talk about some bonus tips for photographing Antelope Canyon. Now you can try to bring a lens attachment. I think that this would create some very unique things, because a lot of people just bring a phone and they point and shoot. But if you want to get unique with it, you could bring some lens attachments for your phone. I will link them in both the description and the guide so that you can see what I'm talking about. Now, something very important is you cannot bring a tripod, a selfie stick, or a monopod or anything. The photography tours are unfortunately no more. You need to go on the regular tours, unfortunately. They heavily poo-poo the tripod. I think they just want to keep people moving. Now, another bonus tip is clean your lens between every shot. I basically just brought a little microfiber cloth, which again is going to be linked in the description as well as the guide. But basically, I just bought like a little microfiber cloth. I just put it in my pocket. You would not believe how dusty and sandy it is in there, and you want to make sure that your lenses are clean literally between every shot, just to get the clearest photo possible. Now next, just be mindful of crowds. This can get chaotic, and there are a lot of crowds, especially I found that there were more crowds in lower Antelope Canyon versus upper, so that is something to keep in mind. Now if you are like, I don't know which one to go to, I have created an entire guide and podcast on the differences between upper and lower Antelope Canyon, so if you are feeling stuck, go check it out. Now when I was in lower Antelope Canyon, I made sure to be in the front of the group so that I could ask the guide to take pictures for me, or we could wait until the next group had moved on. For the upper Antelope Canyon, I made sure I was in the back so that I could get the photos with no people. Sometimes it's just unavoidable, so you might want to shoot up and just get them out of there altogether. And if you are totally lost and you're like, these photos are not coming out, don't panic. Here's the best tip you will ever hear. Just give the phone to your guide. In both tours that I went on, the guide was more than happy to take photos of me, to take photos of really cool areas that I might have missed. So the guide knows what they're talking about, and this is a very photographed destination, so they're smart. Give them the phone or just ask them for help. So that is all that I have for my photography tips for taking pictures with your phone of Antelope Canyon. What did you think? Would you add this to your photography bucket list? Now, important, if you do go to Antelope Canyon and you do get some amazing photos, I would love to see them. I am all about cheering on my adventurous photographers out there. So you can either DM me on social media, I'm at the Bucket List Mermaid, or I do have a Facebook group where you can share all of your photos and give them all the love that they deserve. It is called Shutterbugs Gone Wild. Go check it out and share your miraculous work. These pictures are like art. Seriously, they're right out of a Nat Geo magazine and they deserve to be seen. They deserve recognition. And if this guide was helpful to you, I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button so that you can stay up to date on all of my adventure and photography content. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay adventurous and we'll see you next time.